This is a video for my Interpersonal Communications course. My name is Alex Younger, and today I'll be giving you a speech on Robert E. Howard, a very influential American author who single-handedly created the sword and sorcery genre. We know him best for his work on his character Conan. However, he was also a very influential writer in the areas of sports, especially boxing, Western stories, and horror. He's not as highly valued as some of the other writers at the same time because he didn't write for very long. He was 23 before his first story was really sold, and he died at the age of 30. However, in those 7 short years, he was a very prodigious writer, and he helped influence the course of American literature for years to come. As I said, we know him best for his work on Conan, but his fantasy stories were all deeply rooted in his love of ancient history. He started writing at 9 years old, and his stories were adventure stories of ancient warrior cultures like the Vikings. However, those stories didn't sell. His first story that he sold was a caveman story called Spear and Fang, which he sold to Weird Tales, a pulp magazine he wrote for many years after, up until his death. His first big sale was for Cull of Atlantis. And Cull, he sold 2 stories of, and the rest were never published. However, he successfully rewrote one of them, the Phoenix on the Sword, for a new character, who he called Conan. The favorite period of his own writing from his letters was the 4 short years he wrote for Oriental Tales. During this period, he was allowed to write historical works. He wrote everything from the fall of Rome up until the 15th century. However, Oriental Tales only published from 1930 to 1934. It was during the Depression, and the circulation wasn't making enough money, so they closed it. After that, his historical stories didn't sell. The other magazines, Sports Tales and Weird Tales, wouldn't buy historical works. So he had to go back to writing both his boxing stories and his sword and sorcery stories. He's most well known for Conan, but he wrote several other more historical fantasy figures, such as Bran McMorn and Solomon Kane. In addition to that, however, he published 68 stories about boxing. He went so far as to become an amateur boxer himself, in order to help give his stories more authenticity. He wrote 51 cowboy adventures and 9 generic westerns. And for these, he drew on his experience and life of growing up in Central Texas. He wrote several other humorous stories and uncategorized short stories, showing that his range was vastly superior than just the sword and sorcery he's been relegated to in our short American memory. He also wrote 49 horror stories. 14 of those directly affected H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos. H.P. Lovecraft and Robert Howard were pen pals. They never met in person, but they wrote extensively for years. He was instrumental in encouraging H.P. Lovecraft to go ahead with his vast idea of the Cthulhu mythos, which is simply a universe that any horror writer has been invited to write in. He was one of the first to write in an open format after the copywriting laws and everything. He encouraged H.P. Lovecraft to do this, which has left a lasting mark on American horror. And his Conan character is still generating new movies, comics, and his original books are still in publication and being reprinted. In short, Robert Howard was an amazing author with a great range. He died much too soon, at 30 years old, and he was writing during the Depression, a time when even the most avid readers had no money to buy books. His favorite stories, historical stories, were closed due to low publication. And even with these huge obstacles, he was still able to influence American culture and American literature to this very day. The thing is, we need to remember Robert Howard, not just as a pulp sword and sorcery writer, despite his influence in that genre. We need to remember him both as a cowboy, a boxer, an avid historian, and a huge contributor to both American culture and American literature. Thank you and have a wonderful day.